Hello and welcome to the sixth section of this course, Instrument Configuration and Download. Now you are at the stage of applying the settings so that you can leave the instrument to record for a specific period. You would determine the period based on your requirements, but in most cases, a 7-day recording is desired because it will give you a good indication of how power is utilized by the facility for each day of the week. There may be a day or days in the week when load is higher, likely in a factory type environment. Mondays may have high loads in the morning due to machines starting up, and some places may be closed in the weekend and will only have minimal loads during those times. You will make the judgment on the duration based on your homework of the site and recommend the best option to your customer. Once you are satisfied that your connections have been securely made, you can turn on your instrument. If you are testing for power outages at the site, it may be a good idea to power your instrument from a small UPS. Many high-quality instruments will still continue the recording once power resumes. You can decide if you want to or have to use a UPS. I always check that the date and time on my instrument first, so that the recorded data is correct. If your date and time is wrong, your data is likely to be mostly useless. Once you have set up the date and time correctly, go and check that the voltages are correct on each phase. And if you have a vector diagram, that the voltages are displayed with the vectors all displaced 120 degrees apart. If you are measuring a low voltage point with 230 volts phase to neutral, your phase voltages should read in the region of 230 volts plus or minus 10%, and your line voltages, which are phase to phase, should read in the region of 400 volts plus or minus 10%. So here we have your vector diagram, which shows your voltages. As you can see here, your voltages are perfectly displaced 120 degrees apart. And you can see that your phase voltages, this instrument only displays phase voltages and not line voltages. So you can see that your phase voltages are close to 230. Now I also just double check these figures with a multimeter to make sure that my instrument is actually picking up the correct voltages. So we're going to talk about current next. So next, let's check the current readings. Ensure that you have the correct CT ratios applied if your instrument offers that option, or check that you have the correct item from the preset list of CT ratios. First, check the vectors. The current vectors should be in line with or displaced from each phase voltage by an angle, not more than 50 degrees, but usually closer to 0 to 40 degrees, depending on the power factor. If any vector is in the incorrect direction, then turn the CT from that phase around until it is in the correct position on the vector diagram. If the direction is wrong, the VAR and power factor information will be incorrect. Your displayed power factor on a phase may be less than 0.5, and then you will know that it is likely that the direction of that phase is incorrect. So let's have a look at this diagram here. If we have a look here, the red phase appears to be correct, the blue phase is correct, but if you notice the white phase, it's in the wrong direction. So we know that there's a problem with the white phase. In this case, it's not really in the wrong direction, because if it was in the wrong direction, it would be completely opposite to the voltage. However, in this case here, the CT was not reading correctly. Now, after some adjustments, you notice the voltages remain the same. However, notice that the currents are now similar to the voltage. However, they're displaced by the angle of the power factor. Then what you want to do is check the readings of the current. I like to confirm the displayed current by using a handheld clamp meter to verify the readings. Make sure that if you are not reading full primary current, that you apply the relevant CT ratios to confirm that the readings are correct. So in my case, I'm using the 5 amp 1 volt transducer. So basically I'm reading 0.14 amps on phase A, 0.2 amps on phase B, and 0.29 amps on phase C. So if I had a 500 to 5 ratio, then my ratio is equal to 100. So what I would do is take each of these and multiply them by 100. So my first phase would give me 14 amps, and my next phase would give me 20 amps, and my next phase would give me 29 amps. Now what you want to do is also, once that you have established that the voltages and currents are correct, you can have a quick look at the displayed readings for watts, VARs, VAs, and power factor, and satisfy yourself that they all look reasonable. So we can have a look here that our displayed power factor here is 0.96, and this one is 0.94, and this one is 0.89. So it looks correct. If we were sitting on 0.1 or 0.2, then we also know that our CT is incorrect. Another check that I also do is to take a handheld clamp meter, as I've mentioned before, and just check these currents as well. So at the same point that you are measuring with your transducer or your instrument CT, just check these currents as well and make sure that they're correct. One other thing also, write down these currents. So when you're starting your measurement, when you are going to start recording, write down the currents that you have measured and write down the voltages that you have measured. Now you can go ahead and start setting up other parameters, such as what you want to measure and the limits you want to set for each parameter. This will vary on each instrument, so you will have to do your homework on the parameters, settings, and limits. You will also set the recording intervals, for instance, 1, 5, or 10 minutes. Remember that the intervals only apply to profiles and not for event capture. Event capture will work according to your set limits. Events will always capture when a limit has been triggered, irrespective of the average intervals chosen. Once all of the above has been done, you can go ahead and select the Start button. Make sure that there is sufficient memory for the recordings. And if you are using an SD card, that it has sufficient space for the recording period. There are settings on how to deal with memory, and whether you want FIFO, which is first in, first out, when the card gets full, or you want to stop recording. Make sure that you leave the equipment and site in a safe and secure manner. All open electrical panels should be closed if at all possible, and if not possible, then warning tape should be placed across them, and access to the LV room or area should be limited only to authorized personnel. It is very likely that the panels may not be able to be closed because most electrical panels do not have sufficient space within them to accommodate the measurement equipment and the CTs and leads. Now you will leave the instrument to record for your chosen measurement period. It is essential to ensure that access to the measurement area is limited and that the equipment and connections are not tampered with during the measurement period. So we have left our measurement equipment now for a period of 5 days or 7 days or whatever period you have chosen. And when you come back to the site to download and remove your instrument, firstly ensure that everything has been left in the same manner as when you configured the setup. Check that the instrument is still recording data. In cases where you are carrying out event capture, you may encounter the instrument memory being full due to too many events being captured during the measurement period. If this is not the case, then the instrument should still be recording. Before stopping the recording, check that all voltages and current parameters are still being captured correctly by checking the displayed readouts and vector diagrams. Take note of the voltages and current readings as well. I always like to do this so that I can compare my start and end readings when I'm back at the office to check for accuracy. Once you are satisfied that they are in order, you can proceed to stop the recording or begin download if your instrument requires to be downloaded to a laptop. Try to check the quality of the data before disconnection. If the data is given in an Excel or CSV format, it is easy to check the first few lines and last few lines of data. Also check the number of lines of data you have. If you measured at 10-minute intervals for a period of 7 days, you should have 6 samples per hour and a total of 1,008 samples for the 7-day period, depending on what time you started and ended the recordings during the installation and removal days. If your data is in graphical format on an application, have a quick look that you have the relevant data. Once you are satisfied that your data is good, you can begin the process of removing in the following order. Firstly, switch off the recorder. Put on your required PPE. First and very important, remove voltage connections from the live terminals in the distribution panels. And only once all phases and neutrals have been disconnected, then remove from the instrument. Also remove the CTs from the cables, bus bars, or from behind the panel ammeters and place them safely. Then remove them from the instrument. Next, replace all distribution panel covers and close all doors. And if there were any cable ties that you had cut off previously to accommodate your CTs or any other measuring devices, then remember to replace those cable ties. Ensure that nothing has been tripped. Lastly, pack away your equipment and ensure you have left all tools and all equipment. Ensure you leave the site as you found it when you got there. Most of the time, electrical rooms tend to be very dusty and dirty. There's unfortunately not much you can do about that. Just make sure you don't leave any additional mess behind. So, let's have a recap here. We spoke about determining the correct duration of measurement for your specific needs and site conditions. Next, we talked about required checks after switching on the instrument. Then we talked about applying settings and finishing up. And lastly, we talked about ending the recording and disconnection and leaving the site. Now we have our final video after this, and that will be on putting together your report of your measurement period. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.